Let's dive in. I truly appreciate your time, and thanks for sharing that part of More series video with me, because that was incredible. Like, it was cool to see that, and I'm excited to learn more about your story and your experience. And I'm sure everyone that gets to listen to this is going to learn a heap from your lived experience, because you were even in ICU last year? Yeah, 2020 last year.
Yeah,
so it'd be cool to hear how that happened. And obviously it's not cool to hear that, but you take us on that journey, and we'll get a few pointers, but you definitely would have so much value to offer. So I'll just quickly do a quick intro, and then we'll dive in it. But as with how all the podcasts go, I love just having a conversation, because for me, it's as much learning from you as everyone else will learn from you. And I'm sure you've got an incredible story from what I've seen. So we'll you're like, oh, you got it nailed, bro.
See where we go. See where we go. See where we go. That's all it is. Yeah.
All right. Welcome to an episode of the Man That Can Project. I'm your host, Lockie Stewart, and today we've got Andy joining me with the most incredible moustache I have seen in a very, very long time. And we are just chatting before. It's finally working well for you today. We were saying it's like a game of golf. You have a few bad days, and then it's just that one shot where you're like, oh, this is exactly why I do it. And that's exactly why you're growing the mo at the moment, because it looks incredible, mate. You've nailed it.
Cheers, Lockie. Cheers.
Mate, but thanks so much for joining us today. I have the great privilege of getting to have a yarn to you. We got connected through the Man That Can Facebook community, and we've just been chatting. And then one day you shared a video that you got to be a part of, or a campaign, or it was a campaign, the Part of More campaign, which is with the with the Australian Rugby Union.
Yeah. I just thought there's a post you put up about and I thought it was quite a vulnerable post about a previous podcast you had done. You weren't 100% happy with it, and I thought, that's something that is quite not, I won't say brave, but it was just like, kind of something that you just be honest with, the quality isn't there, you're just not feeling that vibe. And I just thought, oh, I can actually empathize with that, because with this this video I didn't want it to become my thing, but I spent a lot of time with the union and the videographer, because I wanted to make sure it was right, because I didn't want to be a part of something that wasn't authentic to me. And so that's how, I just wanted to reach out and say, well, we're brothers together, and sometimes if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And so I just wanted to go out, and it took me a bit of time with the guys to make sure it was right. So yeah, and that's basically me sharing with you.
And I truly appreciated it, bro. Like, I love it when people either, know someone in their life that they think you would be great mates with, or can connect, and they go out of their way to start a group message, or even what you did, you shared something that you've done that really, I was sitting there watching, I was like, far out, man. Like, it may have taken me another 6 to 12 months to find that out about you, but because you were just, we had that commonality where you felt like there was, you could empathize with what you shared that video. And I was like, man, we need to get you on the podcast, because your story and, even stuff that I don't know about you yet will impact so many people, especially with the size of our community. And obviously we've both got rugby in common. And it's what are you thinking of the rugby at the moment, the Australian rugby at the moment? No comment.
I feel real bad because, I'm not from Australia. So I just, look, you know what? Everybody loves a great underdog story, hey? I'm just going to say, hey, just ride that wave for a while.
Yeah.
So, but I'm actually quite, I have this thing where the country you live in, you got to support the home team. And I'm really loving seeing the influence of Pacific Islanders in the Wallaby squad as well. And I'm really loving seeing, we exchanged a couple of messages about Quade Cooper. Yep. I personally am not a big fan of his work, but you cannot deny the talent he has.
Yeah. To be honest, I've been so excited, and I've been saying it to a lot of my mates. I can't wait I was always hoping he would get back in, because there's obviously things about the game and maybe his attitude in the earlier days that I didn't like, but I just still, and every time he's playing, I'm drawn to watch. Like, hot or cold, you just don't know what you're going to get. And from what I've been watching with rugby, especially Australian rugby, recently, it hasn't captured me. But you're definitely right with the influence of the Pacific Islanders in the Australian squad, and even in the Super Rugby. Like for me, and I just love the way you guys play the game, but I also love the fucking passion that you bring to it. It's like, man, even when I was in France playing, and there are a few Fijian boys and Samoan boys, and they're just the attitude and the excitement and the energy that you guys bring. It's like you could have the worst day and you'd walk into training and that is, and all the Pacific Islander boys are just so fucking stoked on life. And I was like, man, I just want to be around you guys nonstop. So adding that to a playing group is incredible. And even, you know, talking to yourself prior, I just get pumped because your attitude and and this is generalizing, but Pacific Islanders, from my experience, hanging out with Pacific Islanders, is just so positive and so happy.
I feel like sometimes I'm not going to be a great advocate.
Right, just retract everything I said.
Yeah, well, you know, I know that you know, I try to really focus on that positive outlook, but there is, and I think this is the thing about Pacific Islanders, because, you know, and this is a really big generalization where off the field, yeah, everything's great. Well, we're all buddies, you know, but on the field, nah, you know. And then there's it's not a mongrel mentality, but it's just like, oh, it's on, you know, and it's like, yeah, we're here to play, and yeah, we'll have a great time. And then, you know, and it's this kind of what you might describe as a kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde mentality, because you've seen where off the field the boys are like, yeah, that was awesome, brother, you know, all good, but on the field the language changes, you know, and the intensity goes up a notch. And this is where, and I know that people go, oh, you're quite lovely to talk to off the field. I'm going, yeah, that's really great, but on the field, nah, you know. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. And that's what I think, what I love about watching Islanders play, where, you know, you get some of these boys, natural talent, you watch them and they're just amazing. And then you hear that, and there's a phrase, you know, we talk about this hyena kind of high-pitched laugh that they've got. Yeah. And when I hear that, it drives me nuts. And I'm just going, but, you know, but that's the thing, you know, you want a diverse team as well. And when I say diverse team, you know, you just want that range of skill sets, and everybody complements each other as well. So, yeah, it is my thing, you know.
Yeah. Well, that probably, you know, leads you back to the part of more campaign and what that was all about, like diversity and inclusion. And, you know, you're a huge advocate for it, and that's what you really use your voice for. Now, and especially obviously within rugby. And for those who haven't seen the video, I've posted it in our Facebook groups, and I'll also put the links in the show notes for wherever you're watching or listening to this, so you can watch the clip. It goes for about 2 minutes, and it's pretty 2 minutes, yeah, 3 minutes. It's unreal to watch. But do you want to take us through a bit of a backstory around how that came about for you, and I guess things in the lead up to it? I don't want to give anything away. I'll let you tell the story.
So I'd moved to Melbourne. I've been in Melbourne for 8 years, but I'd moved to Melbourne a few years before that video was made. And I was playing for an inclusive gay rugby team here in Melbourne called the Melbourne Chargers. Well, there's another funny story of how I actually ended up playing for them. But and throughout the course of playing for them, I got to know Neil Hay, and he was the coach of the Melbourne Chargers at that time, and he's fantastic. He's a great advocate for Victorian rugby here in Melbourne, and he shared my story with some counterparts he knew at Rugby Australia, and they were developing a series of A Part of More. So it's community-based, focused around what inclusive rugby looks like from a community aspect. So it's not just about gay rugby players, but it covers the spectrum of, you know, families, wheelchair rugby. So, you know, and it's all about rugby players. You know, it's this great umbrella term. And so I'd been playing for a while, and you know, it was just like, and my story had been shared, and I kind of got a call out of the blue, and they said, "Oh, would you like to be involved in this video?" And I was like, Yeah, that's fine. I just thought, yep, you want to share my story? I don't think my story is at all amazing. I just was like, I enjoy playing rugby, had taken time off, and was not fortunate enough to be great enough to play semi-professional, but just like being involved in team sports. And so Rugby Australia called me. They wanted to interview me more about, what it was like for me as my coming out story, playing for a gay team, and what was it like with my experience with teammates, and just my personal journey. Over this time there, it was really interesting because the Israel Folau story had come out post the recording.
Right.
And all of a sudden my video and story became quite a different narrative of something where I was really strong there around. I didn't want my image being used as a champion piece for inclusive rugby, and to position me as the opposition to a divisive message. And I've always wanted to really focus on, we should be champion those who actually support people. And instead of focusing on what are the negatives, we don't actually talk about the people that actually champion us as people, and as men or women, and or as players. So my story was always focused on, I was fortunate that I was carrying this weight around for a long time, and even still uncomfortable about what it would look like if I were to bring my partner to venues as well. And and the simplest story for me is that my journey was of acceptance. And basically the story is that, was I prepared to play 80 minutes with everyone else on the field? Do I still train? Do I still put the work rate in? Do I still catch up for a beer? Yeah, that still remains unchanged with me. And so, and that's the message I really wanted to focus on, is that if we can focus on champion people that champion you, then that's how we would succeed together. And so that's essentially how my story and video came out. And there are a lot of other great stories as that part of More campaign. You get to see, I actually don't think my story is about adversity, true adversity. You got to see these stories of these other people in there as well. But I know that my story can help, and that was the other thing why I was quite keen to be involved, is that as an Islander, for example, I've never seen, and I mentioned this as well, never seen another gay Islander rugby player. So I know the difficulties and struggles I went through, where if it can help one other person, and I think that's what we talk about. It's a really cliche phrase. If it can help one other person, then it's worthwhile. So
what was that like for you? Like, not having, because you're definitely right. Like, everyone, or most people, I don't want to say everyone, but have someone that they can definitely relate to who's doing something, whether it's professional rugby or basketball or in business and things like that. And as you said, you weren't aware of another gay Pacific Islander rugby player. So for you, you were paving your own way essentially with that. What was it like? What was that experience like for you? Were you always confident in yourself and moving through that? And I know you just said before, bringing your partner to a game or to a function, like what were you feeling and thinking about during those times? Like, that's what because I can't relate to it. So I'm really fascinated to understand that.
I think growing up for me, enjoyed watching rugby. It took me a while to actually enjoy rugby as well, coming from a rugby family. So I came from a dad who just loved rugby so much that it just became such a big topic for us, where I was like, nah, I don't want to play rugby. And so I kind of came into the sport late, but I come from a family of, there's 5 of us, and all play sports, athletic. And so, there's always sports in our household. But as I started to really enjoy playing rugby, I started to really look up to the All Black rugby players. And, and there's a great prop from the early 90s, Olo Brown. And so, for me, if I was looking for role models, for Islander role models, I found them in sport. And so growing up, I may have not been able to find a gay rugby player, but I found other idols that I could actually look up to. And even when I talk about this, the sexual identity, and we talk about sexual preference identity, this for me was another journey as well. So we've got kind of these two parallel journeys where, when you're 15 years old, you're clueless, you have no idea what you're going through in life.
Yep.
And so it's not like I actually knew, yeah, I think I do identify with that. But then it's like, well, I don't know, because and being a teenager, that's nuts. You've got hormones kicking through. You're experiencing exams for the first time in your life that's going to determine the rest of the outcome of your life. You've got social circles that you don't even know if you fit into them. So growing up, you've got this whole gauntlet of things that you're trying to actually overcome and meet and challenge. And so what I did in my mindset to keep me sane, it didn't always work, but I just kept trying to find a variety of role models that I could actually could look up to. And sometimes it would be role models reading books. It might be a role model that I found listening to music, and the lyrics were just the right thing for me. So music is actually quite an important component in my life. I don't have a hard out favorite artist, but there are songs, and everybody's got a song from a particular decade and moment in your life, and when it clicks on, you just go, that's the one.
That's the jam.
Yeah, and it's like, so this growing up phase, it's always trying to find the right model. I'm actually 44 now, and I still look to it. What is that role model that I'm looking for now? Because role models serve a purpose. And I think also role models need to change and adapt, because you as a human being will change and adapt. I think I listened to one of your podcasts earlier, and you got to get that hustle on, and so with that hustle, it's like, you got to find the right role model.
Yep.
To give you that.
I really loved where you said you took certain things from people, like you were having these two challenges with their sexual orientation and stuff. And you said it's like that gauntlet when we're growing up, and there's so many things going on in our life. And generally, as we're getting, when we're younger, we're experiencing all these things for the first time, and it's overwhelming as all buggery. And when we, look for role models, people are looking for this perfect person that needs to have absolutely everything together. As soon as they do one thing wrong, they're like, nah, stuff that person, they're bad, go to this person. And I've always been a huge believer into finding just specific traits or things that people do well. And no one's ever going to be perfect to us. That's what makes us unique as individuals. So if I can see that person, is an incredible dad or partner, or just bloke in general, but maybe on the piss, they're a bit of an idiot. Yeah. I can still go, I really respect that element about them. And maybe I don't want to follow, the alcohol part of them. And then someone over here might be incredible with how they conduct themselves and how they treat people, but maybe they, don't look after their physical health. So I'm always looking at people and just taking that one thing, and I go, I really respect that about you, and that's what I choose to focus on, rather than just dismissing a whole person because of one thing maybe I disagree with.
Oh, 100%, and that's the thing about, I know I don't put myself up as a role model, I just put myself up as, Andrew. And if there's something that I do that you like, great. But if what I do or say does not click with you, then you know what? It's all right. And you can find that right role model for you. So that's part of where I think about my journey and process around how I share this story. And I was quite aware of when this came out, and we're talking about a couple of years ago as well. And so I was quite cautious of, I don't want to be that guy who rode the coattails of this thing and always became known as hey, he's that guy who did that video. And just constantly became, that was my thing, because that is not me. That's a component of who I am. But this is me over here, and these are the other things that I do. And so, and that's where constantly checking, evaluating, well, what am I doing that actually helps others, but then also holding myself accountable too. You know, I know that there are other people in the world that think I'm just filthy, you know, and you know what, and that thing about perception, you know, so I'm aware of it, and you know, I always think, you know what, I can try to be better, and I think that's the thing. You know, if I succeed, great. If I don't, at least I know that I'm trying, and I check myself. And one of the things, I'm actually in this phase of where I'm in 2021, is, am I surrounding myself with the right people in this journey of where I want to be? And so, and that's why I've just sat around in a couple of years of just surrounding myself with the right people. Can I talk to people honestly? Because, you know, that's a really important thing about, you know, I really love the Man That Can project, which is around surround yourself with people that will create this momentum of moving you forward. However, you do need a bit of a good laugh now and then.
100%.
Yeah, so I like a good laugh. You know, sometimes my humor is not for all, but hey, I rate myself as a good person to hang out with as well. But not for everyone, but I'm guaranteed you'll have a good time hanging out with me. But now that's a bit cocky, but you know,
that's spot on, mate. I love it. It's you're so spot on there, though. Environment and making sure you're around good people who are going to help, you know, enhance you to get to where you want to get to and bring out the best. But I think through my own journey of, you know, self-development and trying to be a better version, I almost got an ego because I just became so focused on just being better in every element that I thought, you know, joking around, banter, all that sort of stuff, having a few beers was just below me. Because I was like, you know, which is, I've recognized that now, but there was probably a 2-year stint where I was like, why would you do that, mate? That's not serious. Leave that behind. And obviously you need to find the balance, because at the end of the day, you can learn all of these things, but if you're miserable in the process of doing it, what's the point?
Well, I love this thing about, we talk about, you know, don't be miserable. So my sister is, she's retrained as a nutritionist, and we were talking about these things, and it's the simple lessons, eh? And I was talking to her about, like, what's a better protein, chicken breast or chicken thighs, you know? And she said, well, it comes down to this. Do you want to be a person who eats chicken breast or chicken thighs? Like, actually, that pretty much makes sense. You know, I was focused on the elements of, you know, which is a better protein for me, you know, compared to fat in the meat, and you know, I just overthought it. And she just said, for the rest of your life, do you want to be that person who eats chicken breast or chicken thighs? And I just went, great, thanks, Marty. You know, and I was like, I should talk to you more often. You know, there's a reason why we have older siblings, you know, and I think that thing where, just that example of, sometimes it's actually not as complicated as you think, and sometimes choices are quite simple if you actually understand what the problem is. And for me, I was misreading this. I was actually prepared to put myself through a misery of eating chicken breast. I didn't mind it, but I'm not a big fan of it. But you know, yeah, so now my grocery list is predominantly chicken thighs. We might have chicken breast once in a while, but chicken thighs is what I prefer to eat. So,
I was wondering which one it was going to be. That's for sure.
what would your option be?
Probably thighs as well, actually. Yeah, definitely thighs.
Mate, chicken thighs are universal. You can do so much more with it. Chicken breast, yeah, I don't know. Just chicken thighs, everything takes marinade pretty well. You know, even if you leave it in a pan, it doesn't actually dry out as much as chicken breast. You know, universal meat.
My missus just walked past, and here she can't hear what's being said here, but she hears the thighs. Yeah, I like thighs the best. We're talking about food, chicken prep. She's like, oh, okay, perfect. But thighs.
It's always chicken prep. You know?
Yeah, it's always breast.
Yeah.
Thighs. But yeah, I think that's where a lot of people get caught up in a lot of their life. There's, you know, we can look at, as you said, in with rugby or the part of more series and all of that, like there's an umbrella within everything, and then there's like subcategories which, you know, you can sort of niche down on things. The same with nutrition and self-help and relationships and all that sort of stuff. There's like a blanket approach, and then you can fine tune specific things, but most people aren't even getting the blanket thing right. And that, you know, people are out drinking beers, for example, or, neglecting their sleep, and they're trying to do their micronutrients, which is the most stressful, from my experience, the most stressful, boring way to live and eat. Yet here they are sinking tins on the weekend. I'm like, well, if you really care that much about your food, maybe you should just also cut out the alcohol on the weekend and just simplify the process. And then once you get consistent in minimizing your alcohol use or whatever it is, you can slow things down. That might be a little bit loud. Sorry.
No, I hear a microwave beep. I know that sound. I know that. I think that what we're talking about here is like consistency, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so, in order to not, and I speak for myself, and I talk to people where, trying to attain perfection is nuts. Unless you're that personality type A. But
100%. And there never is perfection, like especially unless, in my opinion, you're going to be an elite athlete or at the top of whatever it is, and you require those sacrifices. But for most people, we're just trying to get the most out of life across various different areas, which means if you go all in on one thing, like just living off chicken and broccoli, which for me would never work ever, you're sacrificing so much more, and you've got to then weigh up what's really worth it for you.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's what it really comes down to. What it comes down to, and I think it's really interesting when, just watching your story about, you're getting married soon.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's really interesting because I think about with my partner and I around how do we fit together in this plan of this foreverness. And for example, so my partner is a triathlete.
Yep.
So even if we talk about the different types of sports, and people, I was explaining, like rugby is kind of a sprint-based sport, where triathlons is an endurance based sport. So even for us, we don't train together because it's ludicrous,
Yeah.
Our nutrition needs are completely different. And so we have to find what this compromise is. We used to have arguments over what we would have for dinner because the amount of carbohydrates he would have would just be, oh, this is making me sick, like I like a bit of rice, but I couldn't eat 2 cups of rice in a sitting, and so I think this is the whole thing about the striving for perfection and what that consistency means, but it also is how does that consistency impact on other people? And that's the other thing that I've been looking at is I don't want to be a dick to people as well. And I realize that if I become that person who solely becomes focused on I have this analogy of nutrition and food, because it's a universal thing that everybody talks about, where just because I prefer chicken breast, actually my partner hates chicken. I prefer chicken thighs. He hates it, and he prefers chicken breast. And I'll go, okay, we'll compromise, So we'll just have a bit of both, and we'll just make sure that we're both happy because we can compromise. It's chicken. At the end of the day, it's just chicken.
Yeah, keeping it simple. Culture can just split it up.
Yeah, and the other thing is, what is the key issue here for us? It's like we just need to make sure we've got good nutrition, which we do. Do we support each other? And that's why I come back into your story about what this life looks like when you enter a married, obviously being a couple, but marriage is a different notch. That's like you're basically signed. There's no returns on this one here.
It's cashing in.
Yeah, pretty much. Off the market.
Scary, but it's exciting at the same time. But take us back to last year. So last year you were, so obviously you've overcome some hurdles and you're a part of that incredible inclusivity campaign. I think the way that you wanted the message to be portrayed, where it wasn't about division, which is, there is enough division going on in the world at the moment with, it's just crazy. Like people don't seek to understand. It's just like mine's the only way to do things and fuck you and carrying on, which, I can understand why people do that. It's just not the way I choose to do things, because I think everyone can teach you something you don't really know about. And, like we've already said, there's certain things that you can really enjoy about certain people's, and they can equally have traits that you're like, man, can't tolerate that. But
it's the A-type personality, isn't it? That just, everybody's got that one mate, and it's like, yeah, like you've always got that one mate who became a professional rugby player. And then obviously there's a reason why they became a professional rugby player, where, yeah, you're cool, but we can't hang out anymore because you're just driving me up the wall. So I guess, sorry, I digress. I tend to waffle a bit. But so yeah, last year was actually another hurdle that I experienced, which was, so I did the video and then I started getting involved with how do I use my voice for influencing and supporting the causes of what this LGBTIQ plus community needs. And so I was doing a few public speaking events and then the pandemic hit, and so I had planned and, with a group of doing events around the country. So we were pretty much going to hit the road and talk about the narrative of how diverse Pacific Islander community is and the spectrum of what it looks like for us. And people could ask questions, and the questions of role models was asked as well. And who did I look up to? And so I was all, yep, G'd up, good to go, hit the road, let's get out there, pandemic hit. And so obviously we're not going anywhere. And obviously I'm Victoria based, so, we went into lockdown pretty quick. And then during lockdown, I still wanted to keep up training and exercising and kind of set myself weird challenges to keep it interesting. So I would go for, 2-hour walks in the morning because I still want to get up at 5 and just do something. But during that stage, somehow I developed a lung infection and I didn't even realize it. I just actually thought I'd damaged the pulled a muscle in my rib cage. Didn't even fall over, just one of those freak things where, well, I don't know, you just go, like, it's like you cork your hamstring. Nobody knows how they cork a hamstring. You're just running one day and you cork it. Daft. But I clutched over and I grabbed my rib cage going, oh, this isn't good. So I went to my physios, booked them up, and luckily, they're essential workers and they gave me exercises. But over a period of 5 weeks, it wasn't improving. I was actually getting worse. And I actually, so I'm a big guy and I actually lost close to 20, about 17 kilos in body weight over 5 weeks. So I went from eating healthy meals to could barely move, couldn't even walk down my hallway, which is roughly 10 meters. And just slept. Yeah, so, and it was having night sweats and just, couldn't work out what was going on. And that's the thing on lockdown, you don't realize that you're not going anywhere. So I just thought, oh, I'm just getting bored, just probably a bit tired. This recovery is taking a lot longer. Long story short, I ended up going to my GP going, hey, things aren't feeling good, eh? And he actually asked, are you still walking? I said, I can't even walk anymore. And he said, yeah, that's not a good sign for someone like you who's active, physically active and training. And you were going from like 2-hour walks in the mornings plus doing a home workout with, I actually made my own sandbags during lockdown as well. I actually got real creative with weights. But we went through this and somehow I had developed an infection in my chest cavity area. So the pleura space, which is just out between your rib cage and your lungs. And it actually had filled up with pus and it had developed into septicemia. Yeah, so went to hospital and and literally it was one of those moments where I don't want to sound dramatic, but it was kind of like, shit, this is serious. I'm sitting in the car driving off and it's a bad sign when you go get an x-ray that it's not the radiologist who comes out, but it's the radiologist and the practice GP, and they come talk to you together, and you just go, oh, nah, this is not good.
Trouble here.
Trouble, and I'm just going, what is it? And they're going, you got to go to the hospital now. We've called your GP. He sent a letter to the hospital. They're expecting you. Go into the hospital. And this is where literally just my whole body started to shut down. And so I had to have emergency surgery to try to clean out and drain the infection in that lung space. And then on top of that, post-surgery, ended up losing quite a bit of blood in there as well. So I had a couple of blood transfusions. and just didn't recover and ended up in ICU for a few days afterwards. And, yeah, so something where I'm feeling a bit all right had gone downhill, and and because it's the pandemic as well, so they're wondering COVID symptoms, is it? And so, thank God, it wasn't COVID related, but it was just one of those things that happens. People get lung infections or an infection of some sort, and so that really knocked me out, because not only had I lost 17 kilos in weight, I'd lost muscle mass. I have a kind of literally an open chest around the side of a scar where they actually, had to crack me open to get in there to clean it out. Post-surgery, I had a couple of tubes coming out for the drain. Yeah, so it was one of those things where I was like, whoa, this is surreal. You think about it, it could happen. And I was in hospital. And the other thing is, I was talking to my sister and my brothers in New Zealand, and I've got a brother who lives up in Noosa, and decided to keep it a secret from my mum, because like all mums.
Why is that?
Well, we were thinking all mums want to do is get on a plane and come over and look after you, and we're just going, oh no, I can't get my mum to travel during the pandemic. She's in her 70s, and so we tried to keep it a secret, and then. And then we ended up having to tell her, the waterworks started to happen, and I'm on the phone with her, and I'm telling her, Mum, I'm fine. Came out of surgery, I'm all right. I talked to her before, talked to her afterwards, and that was just kind of a really chaotic time for me as well. And then during the pandemic, my partner wasn't able to always see me, so I was only limited to one visitor a day, and so took me a long time to get back into training, where breathing, I still have a few breathing issues at the moment, so I still have a few checkups with the hospital.
How was that for you mentally, though, going from a point where you lost all that weight, all the muscle, you couldn't see people that you cared about?
I think it's not till afterwards I realized that I was pretty fortunate in that it could have been worse. It's one of those things with septicemia, and the infection itself is that, there's a tipping point that your body goes through where your organs literally shut down. And I was just fortunate that at that stage, I'd gone to the hospital just at the right stage. But I also know that I took a positive out of that as well. And I know people go, that's a bit weird, what's your positive? And I actually thought about it, and and I've got a few GP friends, and they were saying, so based on your blood results and their perspective is that you must have actually had a pretty good baseline of health and strength before you went into the hospital. So I mean, like, it's amazing that people are actually surprised that I was walking, with that level of infection and just how my body was reacting. And so I took that as yeah. I mean, like, people go, you must be a beast. And I go, no, just me. So mentally, I knew that I had to start really focusing on what's best for me. And you actually really get to see the positives of the people around you. My partner and I, we talking, and that was good. And then I had mates who actually had come to the hospital. I was only allowed one visitor a day. I had a mate named Ash. He's really good. He snuck me in some sugary treats, a lot of lollies. And so it was good, because after the lockdown and being at home, you have that worry about being isolated. But I actually was lucky that I would actually think I'm actually quite fortunate, because I had good people around me that actually picked me up. And so, and I don't think this illness for me has actually changed on who I am. I just think I've become more appreciative of the people around me who actually reached out to me and said, do you need anything? Do you want anything? And even when I said I didn't want a visitor, they still turned up. So mental health to me is really something I struggle with, and I'm quite open about that. And that's because, you know, I was 18 when I'd been diagnosed with depression. And so for me, it really is key for me to keep focusing on what is the positives, and just making sure that if I'm falling into a rut that's not good for me, I've got to start. I have a few techniques that I start to work out what those triggers are.
What are some of your techniques?
So one of the things I noticed that if I'm not looking after myself, I know there's something not right there. Sleep patterns. If my sleep patterns are out, even if, and it's little things about I'm a bit of a, I like to actually, I'm not a journal type of person, but I like to keep track of, do I go to bed at the same time? Do I get up at the same time? And if I have a routine, because for me, routine is important. And if I deviate from that routine, or if I catch myself going in the circular motion of negativity, then I realize I've got to sort this out quick. And some of that is I check myself and I go, oh, I know what's going on here. Yeah. And so for me, it's that environment, and I have to change the environment that I'm in. And it's in simple, some things where I change my training routine, you know, find the time of day that I can actually get a workout in. And so the triggers are quite unique to me. It's where when work gets a bit overwhelming, you know, I'll just tell people, hey, I just need to take time out for a second, you know, and so I'll just be really clear. I need to compose my thoughts. I need to actually work out what this is. And sometimes, you know, that's for me what works when I start identifying those triggers where I can't see the answer to the problem. Then I know that is a barrier to me. So I just have to stop. And sometimes, you know, I've got to listen to people around me when they say, Andrew, you've got to stop. You're just picking at it. And that's part of my personality type, which I will just be relentless and stubborn until I get to the answer, and probably won't sleep. And then, because I must be right sometimes too, so I know that's my personality, I like to win an argument. And even if I'm wrong, I still won't admit it. I will still find a reason why my argument may be wrong, but it is still right. But then again, I just admit I'm wrong. You know? I don't mind saying sorry if I've really messed it up.
Yep.
But you know, that's who I am. But to answer that question around, you know, triggers, I also know the environments for me is really important. So I choose not to put myself in environments that are highly stressful. And then that also means that it actually means I have to sacrifice time and spending it with people who do want to spend time with me. And I realize, you know, they're great people, but if I'm around certain people for too long, I just can't be around them all the time. So I've got to really portion out how I actually put myself in those spaces where, you know, everyone's got a mate. You just go, hey, you're great to hang out with, but whoa.
Yep.
You know, the mate who wants to keep partying until like 6 o'clock in the morning, go, nah, I'm going to go home. I'll call you in the morning.
Yeah, see you later.
Yeah, that's it.
It's cool to like see over a few things that you've said, like obviously your level of self-awareness around the triggers and the tools and strategies that you've got to look after that. But even the doctors or people were saying to you, like your level of health was what helped you through septicemia, and all of those sorts of things when you were ill. But also communities have been such a powerful thing for you, like obviously with the rugby and everything like that, where you've felt it's been inclusive and it's allowed you to portray or vocalize your story and your message without wanting to create division and say, no, you're wrong, you're right. It's more about like, it is what it is, and I'll support those who support me, and not really make it rain on people who don't. Whereas a lot of people try to bring the other side down if you're not in that supportive side of things.
Yeah. You know, and just like, and what I've done is I've really realized that my time is quite valuable. And when I say that, not in a cocky way, it is valuable. Everyone's time is valuable. So I know that through the Part Is More campaign with Rugby Australia and the different, you know, the ABC stories that were written in interviews, that I've been high school teachers have reached out to me, you know.
Yep.
And so I find that, you know, one of the things that I know I can actually be active in is actually replying back to them. And you know, some of them have year 12 students writing assignments. They don't want to ask me for my perspective on things. And literally, I got a mate this morning, Stu. He's a teacher at another school, and he said, "Hey, do you remember that story you told us about what it was like for you being called a fag in front of your entire school, and what that means to you as an individual, and how that still shapes you? Can we talk about that?" And I said, yeah, I'm quite happy to talk about that, because he's looking at, you know, he's dealing with young men now who don't understand the ramifications of the statement you say can still have weight in the next 20 or 30 years for an individual.
Can you share that with us?
Oh, that story?
Yeah.
Oh, mate, I thought this another time.
We can have you back for a second episode.
No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, so I remember the story quite clearly, and so I was 15. So, you know, if you go to a high school, you know, which has rugby as a really strong sport, and you have these traditional annual matches against the local other high school, you know, where it's the one event that the first 15 is always looking up for.
Yep.
And so I you know, and I'd only really started to get my head around rugby, started playing it for a few years, and when I got selected to start, you know, and that's a big thing, you know, 15 years old, getting started to pick in the annual traditional, and you know, and I'm, you know, you're a bit nervous, you know, it's like, whoa, whole school's actually there to watch, and you know, I'm feeling quite nervous because my parents had turned up, they took the day off work to make sure they could come watch me, and you know, I've got uncles who are old boys of the school as well, so it's kind of not just a school event, but my family are there. And so, and I'm from Wellington in New Zealand, so the weather's not great, you know, it's a cloudy day, but it's muddy rugby, which is actually pretty good to play in, you know, because you have to slide around. So it's, you know, good, you know, honest, good fun. But I remember there was a portion in the game, and it was a line out, you know, so I'm in a line out, ball gets thrown in, and I turn to chase the ball as the, you know, because you know, it gets thrown down to the number 8 down the back. And so as I turn my back, I actually turn my back to the school because they're on the sideline. And then I hear out loud, "Fits, you fag." And it was one of those things where it cut through all of the noise, and I heard it, you know, and in my mind, I switched, you know, and people don't realize that you switch quite quickly. And I started to get pissed off, and I thought, hey, I actually earned this spot to be here. Yeah. And I'm actually here representing, you know, this school that we talk about, this brotherhood of, you know, of brothers from St. Pat's Town. And then somebody was a coward and was prepared to call me a fag behind my back while I'm playing there. And I started to remember that I got angry. But then what happened is that it messed up with my mindset during the game. And then we got to halftime and I got pulled off, you know, and so for me, that is a negative memory. But, you know, and so when I talk about as a 15-year-old, you've got all these different things, what's going on. And then not only was I embarrassed that my parents were there, you know, and I was actually imagining, oh, what am I going to get? A bollocking from my parents because I just had a coward behind me call me a fag. And not only my parents there, you know, I've got an older brother and my uncles are there. So it's become this thing where it becomes this weight and a burden that sits on me. And now I'm trying to actually comprehend, what do I do now? Where do I actually have to have this weird conversation with my parents around, are you gay or not? Or do I have another conversation about why did you come off at, you know, halftime? Or, you know, so the thought process around that kind of just goes through your mind. So, and like, I remember that story quite clearly. And so I really start to think and talk about, it's these microaggressions that we constantly have in society where, you know, I tracked down the kid, you know, that's my thing. I just knew that voice. And so I tracked them down and I said, did you call me a fag? And I was like, no, I didn't. And I was like, no, you did, because I actually heard you, because I know you, and the boys, it's guy from the circle of friends that we've got, and I was just like, well, look, I know it's you, and that's all it is. I just know it's you, called you out on it. You're not going to be I use this phrase, you're not going to be man enough or human enough to admit it that you said it. You're just shitting your pants because I caught you, but still, I may have been strong enough to confront the bully, but still in my mind, it still sits there. It sits there where I might go to a job interview, or I might just be walking down the street and it just pops in. And that's that thing about that mental health scenario that I really have to be aware of is, you become your own worst enemy, because I revert back to that 15-year-old, and I have to remember, no, I'm 44 years old. I took that opportunity and I turned it into something else. But there are a lot of men out there who can't, or who are still stuck in that phase. And so that's why I always really find that if I can use storytelling of, this is my story, if it helps, it helps. If it doesn't help you, just keep looking for that person who can help. I'm not the answer to everything, but if my story helps, let it help. And this is where people ask, well, how did you get your mindset around? I said, that took a long time. I had an awful, my 20s were awful, drinking a lot, partying, didn't want to play rugby anymore. Just kind of just reverted back into my own kind of like social circle, because I was earning money, got a job, started earning money, started enjoying going out, maybe playing the social game on a Saturday if I felt like it. If I was too hungover, didn't care. And I realized, but I realized later on in life, I actually wasn't doing myself any favors, so I had to make changes. And so making changes has been really, for me, like a 15-year journey. I look back at photos of what I look like, and I was going, I'm actually so embarrassed that I got myself into a state of this unhealthy outward appearance where I was actually reflecting what I felt on the inside, and it was actually coming out on the outside, which was, just didn't really care about myself. Quite happy to let people create negative opinions or perceptions of me, because I created this persona of, you can't come near me. And so that's where I really have been working on. Can't help myself, and I can't help others, for example, if I don't focus on what I do, and it's the thing, walk the talk.
100%.
Simple messages, mate.
It is, at the end of the day, when you really think about life and how we want to feel and various things, it's simple, but we make it complex by, overthinking, having people get in our ear and criticize us or call us names and stuff. Like, it's just the environment that we're in really helps to overcomplicate shit. It's like, if you go out into, even for me, when I come up to Toowoomba, it's so chilled out here. We're on 5 acres and it's dead quiet. And it's like all the stress that I carry Monday to Friday when I'm in the city just disappears. And you're like, I'm stressed over nothing. I'm stressed over someone's opinion that I don't even care about. But I've got one last question for you, and then I'll let you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I'm sure you've enjoyed this, mate. It's been unreal.
Yeah,
but what is your definition of being a man?
It's really interesting. I've been listening to a few of your other podcasts and the different answers guys give you, and then I was thinking, I've got to think of something, and then I realized that it depends on. So my answer today, and I may change tomorrow, because tomorrow I become a new person, because
That's
you
fine,
live,
right? Yeah.
And so my definition of a man is just be a good human, And when I say that, be a good human, which is there is a phrase that I start to actually think about, which is empathy, and how can I empathize with others? And I think that's part of the thing about being a man. As men, we have a level of privilege in society. And as that privilege gives us, and if we can use empathy to understand other people's situations, then we should be using that in supporting others. So to really think about what it is to be a man, which is, support others when you can, and if you can, because you don't need to put yourself at risk. I've seen plenty of good guys try to help other people out, but I'm going, yeah, but you're doing yourself no favors. So to be a man is if you can help others by being a good human and just be honest with what you can deliver on, you know, it really short, simple lessons. And that's where I love this phrase, and it kind of summarizes how I feel about being a man, which is, you know, measure twice, cut once. You know, yeah, just use that phrase whenever I'm in a meeting with people, just talking to people, and I'm going, measure twice, cut once. You know, I remember that from a woodworking class that I did when I was like maybe 8, you know, and I realized that's a good lesson to live by.
100%. Simple and effective. I'm a chippy by trade, so it definitely is simple. But Andy, mate, thank you so much for your time and sharing your story. And obviously we could go into so much depth, and we'll definitely have you back on because there's more questions I'd love to ask and learn about you. And obviously as your life, like you said, you're going to be a different person tomorrow, as will I. So it'd be cool to check in. But for everyone listening, I'll put Andy's socials in the links, whether you're on YouTube or the podcast, or if you join the Man That Can Facebook group, you're in there. So you can connect with Andy through that and follow his journey and see all the impressive messaging he's putting out there.
Cheers, Lockie. Mike, good to meet you. Obviously look forward to a future chat. Maybe a beer. We'll see what happens with lockdown.
Yeah, mate, I'm keen as for a beer.
Yeah.